I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Director Mendoza's running a little bit late. So first of all, we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're going to have Paul Peschel. Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have Jeff Moody, pastor with the Southern Baptist Church from Imperial. Is he here in the audience? Yes, sir. Would you please stand up and give us the prayer? And I apologize. Usually you would do the flag salute too. So.
That's perfectly okay. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Lord God, we do thank you for this beautiful day you've given us, Lord. For this time that they come together, a time of celebration to honor these faithful employees, dear God. They've given years of their life of faithful service to this company. Lord, thank you, dear God, for the district, that they do not muzzle the ox, dear God, but that they feed those, Heavenly Father, that serve them faithfully. And Lord God, I pray for every board member of the district, dear God, that you give them wisdom, guidance, and direction in all matters, Heavenly Father, as they seek to manage the resources that you've given them. Give them the direction that they need, Heavenly Father, that for every decision that affects the livelihood of so many people. Bless this time today, Lord, and bless this meeting, we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Moody. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll move on to Mr. Garber. Were there any thing to report out of closed session?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we're going to move on to the presentations with the service awards to 18 employees for their dedicated service to the Imperial Irrigation District. So will the board please come down front?
For the service awards, they all read the same, except with the name and the years of service. Since this certificate of recognition and service pin replica of the district emblem are presented to, and this one is presented to Alonso Serrano for 10 years of loyal and faithful service to the Imperial Irrigation District. For 10 years of service, Marcela Caballero, Compliance Administrator in the Energy Department.
Oh, you really want to jump the dean president, huh? Man, I know you're anxious, but dang, could have waited.
I'm glad I'm not early. You'll get him when I get home.
The husband. For 10 years of service, Belinda Rangel, Clerical Tech in the Energy Department. For 10 years of service, Michael Kemp, Supervisor Regulatory and Emergency Planning Assistant. For 20 years of service, David Arias, Construction and Maintenance Worker in the Water Department. For 30 years of service, Enrique Valenzuela, Construction Worker, Water Foreman in the Water Department. For 30 years of service, Fernando Antunes, Steam Plant Tech 1 in the Energy Department. For 30 years of service, Walter Gonzalez, Project Manager Senior, the Executive Office. For 35 years of service, Sandra Correa, Administrative Assistant 1, Executive Office. She does, Amelia. Amelia. For 35 years of service, John Singh, Power Troubleshooter, Energy Department. Come on, Hillary.
Big smiles, everybody. Listen to one. All right, awesome. One more. 1, 2, 3.
He lasted longer in the district than I did.
And for 40 years of service, Marco Carlos, Program Manager Senior in the Water Department.
That's what the order with the works.
Is there anyone else here on the list for service awards for this month that I did not call your name? Okay, that ends our service awards.
Yeah, what's the next one?
Good afternoon. We're also here today to recognize a small handful of gentlemen who have recently met all the requirements of the state-approved apprenticeship programs. I'm going to read their names and their various crafts or their specific crafts as we go through this list. I also want to make a brief comment about the reliability of our system. Here we are in a room full of journeymen and the lights are still on. So that's a good thing. First, Lawrence Angulo, Control Operator.
So as you read the names,
Just keep going. Jerry Apodaca, Control Operator.
I also like to acknowledge Rick Johnson. Rick, he was the training officer and he's the one that originated this program, and without him and his leadership, these dudes wouldn't be getting their certificates. So, Rick, thank you.
Mark Butler, Lineman. Jose Caloca, Control Operator.
How's your name come up with it? I'll let you the one that called before you.
Gary Collins, Control Operator. Alexander De La O, Lineman. Gabriel Garcia, hydro operator. Jeffrey Gist, hydro operator. Geronimo Gonzalez, hydro operator. Jason Jones, lineman. Marco A. Luna, control operator. Richard Marquez, instrument tech. Jesse Medina, telecommunications tech. Carrie Messenger, instrument tech. Caesar J. Perdomo, hydro operator.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Ray Rose, control operator. Pedro Sepulveda, hydro operator. Jack Shellnut, instrument tech. Alexander Stoffel, instrument tech. Henry Thompson, control operator. Jose Vargas, control operator. Manuel Velarde, control operator. Is there anybody whose name I did not call? Of course I didn't.
Mr. Johnson, come up here and to the voice.
Yes, Rick, come up, Rick.
Get where I'm going with this, like bowling pins. All right, right there.
Since I'm the shortest one.
All right, 1, 2, 3, spot, guys. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Looks good.
I think that's it.
I'd like to have approval of the agenda, items to be pulled from the agenda. So far, I have number 13, that'll be pulled for a later meeting. Any other items to be pulled or out of order agenda items? If not,
What
yes.
happens if we don't agree to pull?
If I could, I don't think that that the board can table something it hasn't considered, but I would ask that the board consider pulling item number 13 with the proviso that it come back at the next
November 1st.
regularly scheduled board meeting of November 1st.
And this is not for action, it was information.
Our problem is that our chief financial officer is sick today.
Well, will the audience be given an opportunity to make comments, because I believe some came for that purpose?
They do that during public comment.
During public comments?
I think Kevin, I know some guys came here specifically for that.
Certainly, with the board's concurrence, if those people could say something for the record during public comments, and then they can
Come back on November the 1st when we have the CFO
ideally,
here.
yes.
Okay, with those changes, could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay. Now is the time for public comment. Please come to the microphone. State your name for the record, and please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. And the folks that came to talk about item number 13, which is information on 2012-2014 Water Department forecast related to water transfer. Now is the time to speak on that issue.
Rusty Jordan Brawley, President Mendoza. I got several things, actually I had to write it down so I wouldn't forget anything. First of all, I'd like to thank John Pierre Menville for causing the analysis of a non-QSA economic effect coming before us as swiftly with flying wings, so we get it. I'm going to go with something small, which is the smaller, is a 218 $77,000 court award. I see in the media there's talk of the catalyst theory, and it really shouldn't have been catalyst theory, I don't think. I'm sure the legal counsel will straighten me out if I'm wrong, because there was no discovery, and typically in catalyst you'd be able to ask everybody why they made their vote. Which brings me around to the QSA liability of the IID for fees if the IID doesn't prevail and the QSA fails, could run as high as their share of $42 million up through trial, adding up the various attorneys' requests. And the thing of note would be that the judge in this 218 lawsuit accepted that method of formulating bills. And that could be, what, a $6 million to the IID, which is a pretty expensive method of doing business. You should note that Al Kalin did comments on the sea habitat, where they're going to where the state wants, Fish and Game wants to put some ponds down by the outflow of the New River and the Alamo Rivers. And I thought that they were very wonderful comments. You should look at them. But I think that he left out one thing strategically, is you ought to put ponds on land that can't be farmed or wouldn't be easily reclaimed. Because your ultimate ability, if the QSA should fail, is to put water to use on the bottom of the Salton Sea to get up to your full allotment if you go to war with with Matt and Coachella I assume you're not going to go with San Diego. I think that John Pierre's comments about overruns, when we have an overrun, we repay, and an underrun, we lose the water, are amongst some of the things that need to be fixed if the QSA is to be redone. And this is a list of things that I would hope you consider. Coachella is going to get water for $80 an acre foot. Met is getting an extension of water at cost. I think the IID shouldn't sell water at anyone to cost in the future, and certainly shouldn't give water to Coachella at such a low price. And it'd be a very easy mantra for the IID to accept, which would be, we want market. If we get market and we have peace, we'll deal. The other side of it is sort of like a Vietnam strategy that North Vietnam pursued, which is continual forever war. And the continual forever war probably is only $20 an acre foot. And the other guys really need the water, so ultimately they'll settle, I think. And it might even be $10 if you counted at 400,000, which would be 200,000 to San Diego. One of the reasons that I understood in the last QSA that we settled where we gave equal water rights to Coachella and we made the deal with Coachella at no money is we wanted to get around a lawsuit which they threatened to first challenge what reasonable beneficial, and second to try to stop transfers where you jump priorities, which we would have done by going from IID to San Diego, because you would have gone over.
Jordan, you have 1 minute. Okay. 1
minute? Okay, well, I'll go quicker. So that'll put you into 417, and you'll have, I think that the thing, no peace, no water, no market pay, no water would be very workable. As far as a local entity, I looked at your water, your cost. You've got almost 1-to-1 ratio to workers to staff in the irrigation department. That might be one way to save some money, is to cut staff. And the other thing is you should relook at the falling water charge, which I thought was politically done. I know, Stella, you thought it wasn't, but I thought it was politically done. And it's green energy, which is worth quite a bit more than non-green energy when you go try to cut your cost down to that. And you're going to need our help for the 218 vote. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan.
I'm Ronnie Leingruber, and I'd like to invite the family of Orby Hanks up here to present his family with a plaque that the Water Conservation Advisory Board chose to honor Orby and his family. Russell coming in. Where's the...
Excuse me, Mr. Lambert. Director Hanks, please join the family.
Whereas the Board of Directors of the Imperial Irrigation District has appointed a Water Conservation Advisory Board to assist and recognize matters related to water and water problems. Whereas the Water Conservation Advisory Board has adopted bylaws with approval of the Imperial Irrigation District. Whereas a motion was made by member Tom Brundy and seconded by member Don Manueli, the IID Water Conservation Advisory Board proudly takes this opportunity to honor a well-known and respected member of our community. Orby Hanks was a long-time and vibrant resident of Imperial Valley. He was active in many ways in many issues affecting agriculture, farm service providers, and especially water matters affecting agriculture and the entire Imperial Valley. Orby gave much of his time to personally study the issues, then write letters to the newspaper and attend important meetings to voice his opinion in his own educated, immensible, folksy way. He became a fixture at IID meetings. With Orby, it was not just a quick quib. He was in it for the long haul. He would stay with it, keep working on an issue until a conclusion could be reached. We express our belated thanks to Orby Hanks and our condolences to his family. Orby will be greatly missed, and further be resolved that this resolution was passed and adopted the 8th day of September 2011. And this is a plaque that's presented to Orby's family, and I'll read the last line on it. It says, "For dedication to agriculture and the entire Imperial Valley, a life well lived."
Okay, anyone else would like to come before the board at this time? If not, then I will close public comments and ask the directors if they have any comments, starting with Director Sanchez.
You always start with me. No
Okay,
comment.
never mind. I'll start with Director Hanks. Any comments, Director Hanks?
Yes. The district filed a petition for change with the State Water Resources Control Board and the Division of Water Rights. And I would like to just make one comment. There is a statement in the petition that states that if the QSA appeal fails, the need for a type of QSA still exists, and California must live within its 4.4 million acre feet. That part is true. However, I would like for it to go on record that the exact form of a QSA will be completely up to the discretion of each of the negotiating parties. This petition does not commit to a particular form. The price and allocation of costs for mitigation will need to be reevaluated as well by the respective parties. That also, like for the staff to take a look, there's no designation of where the early start, I call it early start, mitigation is planned, but I think it needs to be above the minus 235, which is about 90% owned by the IID, and we have a liability with that issue, and I think it needs to be designated. Also, on the issue of the international binational agreement, I would like to ask the general manager to bring a resolution forward which reflects the forbearance of the binational agreement. Any forbearance or a denial of it rejects, which is in conflict with the goals and plans of the IID, particularly Plan B. Additionally, the resolution should reflect concerns of any term provisions of the binational agreement which may adversely impact the shared economic region, common market opportunities, traditional relationships, and shared risks as recognized through lessons learned. I was looking forward to a discussion on item number 13, and I will mention again, I think it reflects negative productivity that this board really needs to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Manuel.
Yes, thank you, President Mendoza. Last Wednesday, I attended the Colorado River Board meeting in Ontario, and they talked about the Brock Reservoir in Senator Wash in Mexico, and just so people will know, as of to date, Brock Reservoir has conserved 90,000 acre feet. I told the WCAB last week it was 70, but my notes say 90,000 acre feet of water to date, and Senator Wash has conserved 84,000 acre feet. And then only 154,000 extra water has gone into Mexico above their 1.5 million acre foot allotment. And then on Saturday night, I was invited to the First United Methodist Church. They had their 100th anniversary gala dinner, and it was pretty interesting. And they brought in Marty Hagan from back in Minnesota. And he was a songwriter and composer and played the piano and the guitar, and it was a very good event. That church has been there for 100 years. It's the third church. The first one they moved from another location. The second one burned down in '62, and they rebuilt it, and that's the one that's there now. And on the comments on, I know I talked to Mark McBroom today, and he was up at the north end. He was going to come down to hear this item 13. Because he was concerned about the water rate increase, but I told him that we were pulling it, so he would have been here today, maybe would have made a few comments, but I told him to stay up on the north end, not to come down here, it had been pulled. That's the extent of my comments. Thank you.
Director Desert.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Mr. Broken's ill today and we won't be able to cover this item 13 regarding the water department forecast related to water transfers. We'll look forward to having that discussion and getting that feedback from the community on November the 1st. That's all. Thank you.
Director Sanchez again. Mr. Garber?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I just wanted to note for the record that another Western Farms trust land parcel has been sold. It's the Lehi and Blevins parcel, 400 acres. It was sold to Eddie and Teresa Wiest as trustees, and it closed on October 13. I have a list of all the Western Farmlands parcels that have been sold since we started selling them back in 2006, and it's here available to the public, and I ask that the clerk of the board place one of these in the record for today.
Mr. Gerber, how many acres have been sold so far?
I don't know acreage-wise. I'd have to defer to somebody in the real estate department to tell me that, or I need a few minutes to add all this up.
You have copies that you're going to hand to the board of that?
Sure.
I'd like a copy, please.
Mr. Kelly, any comments?
I think it's approximately half.
Half of it?
And no, I have no comments.
Okay, now we go to the consent calendar. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay. Under information, the first item, number 4 on your agenda, page 12, draft ethics policy. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, President Mendoza. Good afternoon, board members. In July of this year, the general manager determined that the IID would benefit from the creation of the position of ethics officer in order to assist with the appropriate resolution of ethics issues arising here at the district in connection with district employment. Shortly thereafter, General Manager Kelly asked if I would be willing to serve as ethics officer in addition to my duties as assistant counsel, and I agreed to do that. As the board is aware, there are already a number of district policies that touch upon ethics issues. For example, Policy and Procedure 1071, Standards of Conduct for Board Members, sets forth certain ethical standards applicable only to board members. In addition to that, the district's Conflict of Interest Code sets forth certain ethical standards, but only for certain designated employees. Moreover, the Government Code contains a number of provisions which may be considered ethical in nature, such as Government Code Section 1090, which generally prohibits government officers and employees from being financially interested in government contracts. In view of the foregoing, a logical first step seemed to be to integrate all of the relevant legal provisions and district policies into a single overarching ethics policy applicable to both employees and directors alike. In addition to incorporating the relevant provisions of law, an effort was made to try and determine ethical norms and standards generally applicable to government employment. As part of that effort, a number of ethics policies from other government agencies were reviewed, and in some cases, certain provisions were incorporated into the ethics policy that you have before you now. Additionally, the draft policy has been vetted through upper management, and a number of very good suggestions resulted from that process. At this time, I would like to offer the draft ethics policy for the board's information only. I intend to bring this item back at a future date in order to incorporate any suggestions or comments the board may have with regard to the draft policy. If the board has any questions or would like to make suggestions, I'd be happy to hear those now and incorporate those into the ethics policy.
Do you intend to bring this back for action on November 1st? Or do you need more time for us to review it?
Whatever pleases the board.
Comments from the board at this time?
Yeah, I think we might have to have a couple of informational meetings on it. One, what would be helpful, for example, in item number 3, this policy supersedes some of these district policies. Could you attach those for us?
Certainly, I'd be glad to do that.
Look at those. Also, I had some concerns on page 20 under G, where there was some exceptions to the policy. I would like a little more clarification on that, you know, examples of what type of exemptions that would be.
Well, I can explain where that exception arose. Basically, to start out with, there wasn't an exception, but after talking with Mr. DeVoy, the Human Resources Manager, and Mr. Campbell, I understand that there are currently some related employees that work in the same department, and there haven't been any problems. So the suggestion was that perhaps we incorporate something into the policy to allow for existing situations that time has shown that there, haven't been the problems that you might expect. But certainly we'll defer to the board's pleasure on that item.
Well, I think probably with this policy on nepotism, we've had more complaints from the HR department than any other one. So I'm not too sure about that one. Also, on page 22, under the first paragraph under item K, the second paragraph, we're talking about violations of the law and possible administrative, civil, criminal penalties. It says employees shall not conduct any investigatory activities with regard to alleged violations. Does that mean it's going to be turned over to a different authority? Is that the reason for that, or?
No, I don't think that was the intent, Director Hanks. I think what the concern was that, employees that didn't have authorization might sort of go out on a limb and conduct their own type of investigatory activities, and we didn't want to encourage that.
Okay, well, where does it go from here? It looks like it's a dead end there.
Well, if there is a ethics violation that was substantiated, the policy provides that it would be deferred over to the Human Resources Department for the imposition of discipline under 4350. A violation of district policy would be something that could be addressed under 4350.
Well, I guess probably what would help me if we had a job description of your position, because I'd like to know. I think the whole nexus of this was to have an ethics officer with a little bite to it.
I think there's a lot of concern, at least in my office, that we not create some type of additional investigatory or punishing body that's in addition to HR, the general manager, the internal auditor. I don't think we want to be another investigating body. I think we like to help to define this policy, but we already have other bodies in place. And so I'm not sure what the board has in mind, but I know I don't think I want my office to suddenly have, especially when we're council, to have some type of investigatory role and punishment role. And so that was my concern. And we've had a lot of discussions with General Manager Kelly about this. So I'm not sure what.
Well, I think that's is part of the problem, Mr. Garber. There's we have policies, we have procedures. This board has brought them forward from the general public, and then we get in trouble because we bring up names that are shared with us, and we're not to be talking about the different employees without the employee being present. There's criteria there, but there's no mechanism for it to move forward. There has been numerous issues that's been brought forward that go nowhere. And that's the concern. And this is just an extension of it. We're creating a revolving door here.
I think, Director Hanks, that we can remedy that in this review period. The board should have ample time to review this. These suggestions that you've made so far. For instance, this last one here about, I think, the legitimate concern that employees will go, launch their own investigations. At the same time, we don't want to be so heavy-handed that just in the wordsmithing, we close off the opportunity for that to actually percolate up into something actionable. So you may want to even consider some sort of dotted line reporting. There are a number of things you can do, but I would not let the form in which it's presented to you now curtail the kind of robust discussion that you're having about improving it.
Well, if you move down to the last sentence under responsibilities, I think this sums it up. On meeting that factual threshold, okay, in meeting this threshold, the operative test shall be whether the institution has been or will be harmed or the public ill served by the alleged violation. That's pretty broad. That's pretty vague. What about personal gain? What about the integrity of the institution? How do you put damage on that? And that's what we're just I'm speaking for myself, and I'll let the rest of the board speak for themselves. But there needs to be some type of assurance given to the board that when these things come forward, that is pursued to an end.
Okay. Understood.
And there's concerns. I know the employees have rights. I know that contractors have rights. I know that vendors have rights. But the public also has rights, and their voice is through this board. And I don't know about the rest of you, but my phone rings off the hook. I've been this past year inundated with calls about different issues, and a lot of times it is of a competitive nature, and I understand it could be disgruntled contractors that maybe not have received the job, but there's also complaints from employees that feel like it goes nowhere, and they're very reluctant to bring it forward because of the fact that for it to be settled, they have to put their neck on the line and possibly their job. Okay.
So what you're looking for, Director Hanks, is some type of language that indicates how an ethics complaint would be raised and potentially handled. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what we're looking for is an ethics officer that is a corporate person, not just your department, not just HR, that the board can go to and say, we have a problem here. We go to the general manager, we have a problem, he turns it over, and we want to final product, so we know how it's handled, or if it was handled.
The problem with that is that our general counsel's office we could certainly accept those complaints and route them to other departments for investigation, but we're not equipped to perform an investigation. And the problem is because we're giving legal advice throughout the district, it's sort of inconsistent with.
Well, he has a right to use these groups as part of his toolbox.
All right, then it seems to me we can come up with some type of procedure where he receives these complaints and then moves them forward. As long as we're not actually doing the investigations and meting out punishment, which is inconsistent with our role as legal advisor, that's fine. That would be something that the general manager would do, HR would do, maybe the internal auditor would do.
I think the way we at least contemplated it is that the ethics officer would establish that threshold fact set, make a recommendation to the general manager, and the general manager, as your agent, perhaps even in consultation with you in under some circumstances, perhaps not, would then follow the established process for the meting out of discipline. So it's not fair to Mr. Taylor as an individual to be, the sort of definitive ethics officer. I selected him because I thought he was well suited to this task. But this policy is about anyone who'd serve in this capacity. So,
Mr. Kelly, could I make a recommendation? Director Hanks, would you like to be in one of the subcommittees to review the policy and bring it back within 30 days back to the board? Would you like to serve on that subcommittee?
I don't mind.
I think we know what I think I understand what Director Hanks is looking for, and I think I can probably put something together that, along the lines that Kevin and I are talking about, that would be satisfactory.
Director Hanks, would you like to serve on the subcommittee that I'm going to appoint to work with Mr. Garber and Mr. Taylor and Mr. Kelly? I'm going to appoint you. And who else wants to be on the committee?
I'll do it.
And Director Desert.
Yeah, let's go. Okay.
Okay. So you guys work on it. Come back in 30 days with the policy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Did anyone else have any comments?
Anybody else have any comment?
Oh, I thought they were just going to bring it back for it.
Well, I wanted to say something.
Oh, then go on and say. Come back, Mr. Taylor. Go on, say something.
Thank you. I was surprised when I heard we were going to have an ethics officer. So I have concerns like Director Hanks does. And now that we have a committee, I think we're probably going to have a pretty tough deal on this thing. Road to hoe. I've been here 7 years. We've been through a lot of hedging, a lot of issues here at the district. And like Director Hanks says, there's phone calls in the evening about complaints about what's going on. So I was surprised when Vance got chosen as the ethics officer for now, because in a sense I hate to see that put on you. And so I don't know how this thing is going to shake out. I don't have a problem with having an ethics officer. I think ethics is a very important thing. Common sense is the most important thing there is, knowing right from wrong and not taking advantage of the situation that you're in for your personal gain. It's a big organization, and I think we need some rules and regulations to follow, but not to the point of where it's going to be used in the wrong way. So, and when you guys put this thing together that we have here on the agenda today, where did you get the information from to be able to come up with this document?
We looked at some other ethics policies at other organizations, did legal research. A lot of it is really based on what the law provides in terms of regulation of government activity, conflict of interest, Government Code Section 1090. I mean, those are provisions of law that we all need to live by, and in some regard, we've got those sprinkled throughout our existing policies and procedures. So the effort was really to kind of bring it all together into a single document. And that's more or less how we came up with the document that we have in front of us now.
If you look at the old board standard of conduct that was part of our governance policy, that is very similar to this, but it only applies to the board. a lot of the matters that are covered under their ethics policy are the types of matters that we normally give advice to the district on ethical issues like the Political Reform Act, Government Code 1090, conflict of interest, honorarium, things like that. Since Vance was supposedly made the ethics officer, we've had a nice parade of people coming into our office with ethics issues. Not one of them had anything to do with anything in this policy. They're typically the same issues that we always face, which are HR issues and other issues which really aren't ethics issues. There's been this misunderstanding that now Vance is going to solve everybody's problems, and they need to be narrowly defined to these types of issues. Where we're going to have a whole new job for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think whatever we end up with, it's going to cut both ways. And so that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. We got a committee, bring it back to the board, take our time to do it right, and implement it, and maybe it'll do some good. So I'm okay with it. I just was, like I said, I was a little surprised when this thing first got going, but I don't have a problem with it. We'll see how it shakes out. Thank you.
Director Hanks?
Yeah, let me get a little clarification, because it looks like, we're starting to sound almost like you're a one-stop shop, and that's not the case. You have supervisors, you have investigators, you have auditors. They have a function to do, okay? In the event that it reaches a point where it's questionable whether it's gone far enough, then that's where your ethics officer gets involved. Then the rulings that you would be looking at, and that's why I wanted to see a job description, what authority you have to make a ruling, whether policy was followed, whether a policy was implemented, and whether there was some type of, if there was a violation, was there a follow-up? We don't want to know the particulars of it, particularly with the employees. Okay, but it's for me, it's reached a frustration level.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments,
Yeah.
Director Bezer?
Yeah, Vance, as we work together at this committee level on this ethics policy, I just want to pull in any other attachments or policies that you're referencing in the policy itself to be available. And we also need to go over the governance manual, which also references ethics for the board, as well as 1090. So we need to tie them all together. And then in addition to that, we're currently working together on the purchasing and procurement policy, which deals with the ethics and the sign off by the evaluation team and the team project owner, who's going to be involved in awarding these bids. So I just want to make sure that language is all on the table at the same time, and it's consistent and saying and doing and accomplishing the same thing.
I think that's a good idea.
And as we review those documents, we'd like to see the original ones that you've worked with. I know sometimes there's been original formats, such as the sign-off and the evaluations committee, which has had language changed in the past. Mm-hmm. And so we need to see all those, the original revision of the document, and then any revisions along the way, so we can see and understand better about how the thing has progressed over time.
Certainly.
I look forward to working with you on that.
That's the reason, originally, personally, I thought it needed to be an attorney, because there's some legal issues and there's probably some signatory issues that need to be included in some of our documents that we have.
Yeah, it should double back to any other activities at the ID. This should be the bottom line or the catch-all for any kind of a question.
Okay.
Or cost plus if we're talking water. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Mr. Taylor is, it just so happens that he is an attorney, but as important as it is for the ethics officer to be able to set some sort of ethics action in motion, it's equally important that this ethics officer be able to say no and shut something down. And I think that in Vance Taylor, we have an individual who probably is in a unique position to make that kind of call. He's the principal author of this document. I don't know all the other places that he consulted to write it. But I did add that last part about responsibilities, and I made it overly broad because I think that the ethics officer, in the end, is going to have to be an arbitrator of what is the fairest and truest course that can be taken. So your subcommittee, in working with Mr. Taylor and with my office, I think that you're going to want to balance the need for good ethical standards that are observed throughout the district with the fact that no single person can take on something as unwieldy as morality.
We don't want to make him the vice principal in charge of discipline.
Exactly.
Because he'd probably spend most of his time with board members.
Or with general managers.
All right, so you guys all work together, about 30 days, bring back another policy for review.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 5, page 23 on your agenda. System Conservation Plan Update, Mr. King and Mr. Scott.
President Mendoza, board members. Here today, we told you as we started this project, we'd be back to give you quarterly reports. And the project really just got kicked off like in July, August, and September. So we're here to do that. And I'd like to introduce to you, if you haven't met Joshua Scott, he was hired as the executive program manager to manage this project. And he will give you an update as to where we've been, where we are, and where we're going.
Good afternoon. Just a brief presentation, give you an idea, like Mike said, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. Just a recap, work to date, current status, future activities, and then I'll talk a little bit about our 2 proof of concept runs that we're doing as part of this first phase of the SCP. As you know, the board approved the MWA back in April. And that MWA was approved for 18 to 25 million and authorized phase 1A part 1 only, and that's what we're proceeding forward with. And part 1 or phase 1A part 1 includes the automated heading gates on the East High Line, West Side Main, new SCADA system, spill monitoring, and delivery measurements for the K and South Alamo, which are our proof of concept runs. In addition to that, Zanhero laptops to get this information back out to the field and allow the Zanheros to manage the water better. With the approval of that MWA, that also kicked off our service agreements with 2 consultants, AECom. They're providing a lot of the program management and project management type activities, and as well as the KTT. That's an acronym for our knowledge transfer team. That's a group of consultants that have had a lot of history on the creation of the documents that have gone into the development of the system conservation program. Includes David's Engineering, Keller Bleisner, and the ITRC. Work to date, on the consultant side, we've turned them loose on developing the RFP for the SCADA system, the gates, the spill monitoring, and those sorts of things. We've also got them developing the technical specifications that go into that RFP. This is an RFP that's performance-based, so they're having to craft some guidelines as to what it is that the IID wants out of this program, what we're asking the contractors to do, and the information we're asking them to provide. We've also got the KTT working on a decision support side of this. They'll be providing some tools that the Zanheros can use out in the field to better manage their water, some training to go along with that. And the KTT is also providing some technical guidance, both to IID and to AECom in the development of those specifications. On the IID side, we put together an advisory committee in which it's a forum made up of managers and key personnel throughout the district. We come together at least quarterly. It provides a channel for communication, information sharing, that sort of thing. And in fact, they've seen most of this presentation here a week or so ago. We've also broken down into smaller working groups, technical groups. That includes folks from contracts, purchasing, our SCADA group, our communications group, our IT group, and we've also put together an operations group. And that group primarily to discuss the physical changes that are going to occur with operations once some of these improvements are in, how we move water, and some of the methodologies we currently use and that we may need to revisit as part of this program. Currently, we're finalizing the RFPs for this project. We're right on the goal line with those, just about ready to bundle those up and get those over to purchasing. Updating project budgets and cash flows based on some of the technical specifications we put together, what we expect out of this program. Operational planning, I've mentioned we formed that group. We're starting to dig in now and really analyze current operations and where this program is going to take us. And also working with PMO on some oversight activities, looking at project documents, budgets again, and auditing, that sort of thing. David Zavala is our portfolio manager on this one. Future activities, we hope to release that RFP here within the next week to 10 days. After that, obviously contractor evaluations and finally selection of a contractor on this one, and we'll launch into construction activities hopefully just after the first of the year. We're looking at doing the K in the South Alamo. Those are our 2 proof of concept runs. Those 2 runs will get the full treatment. They'll get delivery gate measurement in addition to heading automation, and Zan Harrows there will have a little bit more information to use, and so they'll get a little bit deeper training and decision support development type skills. Long-term maintenance, that's another one we're looking at. This program isn't intended to add staff to the IID side, so we're looking at having a maintenance component as part of that RFP, in which the contractor for some term would provide the preventative maintenance as well as replacement of the gates and measurement devices out in the field. And then the last one, the training and DSS, that's the decision support. That's going to be a big component. There's training involved on the contractor side from whatever contractor we choose as part of the RFP process. He'll be asked to provide training on the gates that he installs, the equipment he installs, the SCADA system, that sort of thing. But then also that decision support component where the Zan Harrows will be prepared to use that data. They'll learn what types of data they're going to get, and maybe even some training, historical, looking back at older SCADA data to see what types of decisions were made, how they could use the information that we're giving them with this SCP program to maybe make additional decisions or hopefully more informed decisions. That concludes my update.
Comments, questions?
Yeah. Is there any way that you can track your expenditures to try to establish what type of rate increases they're going to drive as far as sustainability of the equipment? You know, obviously some of the equipment will serve dual purposes. Some of the requirements of the transfer, and some would be measurement, new requirements coming down. But in the provisions of the QSA, there was a provision there where the water rate stabilization fund could be created using transfer revenue up to 25%. Mm-hmm. So my question is, when we look at this number 13, that's when we pulled off, what part of that is created by the transfer? How much of that should be or could be covered from a revenue stream that is designated for the QSA, separate from the 25% that's given for rate stabilization.
Yeah, that's probably better left to Mike.
He knows this program pretty good, but some of the background on that is he's been doing a great job of getting us going. But a lot as we move forward, Greg has shown in the past that one of the things we're doing, we don't know exactly what this O&M agreement will look like exactly yet and what the cost will be. We've got some estimates of that. So there is a budget that's set forth for the O&M activities in Greg's water transfer budget for all the remaining years of that goes through. So it's not, it's separate and apart, I think, from what you're talking about. It's not part of the revenue stream for the 25%. It's part of that's been calculated in as part of the cost of doing the business of the water transfer on a yearly basis. And so we'll know a lot more after we receive those contractor bids back from the consultants in the latter part of November, early part of December. We'll have a better idea of what we can expect. We've got estimates and we're working toward that, using those estimates to move forward. But with the program definition of how much we do and what we do, Director Hanks will really be determined on what kind of prices that we get. So, but the O&M component is a component I believe that Greg has built in over the life of the project on a yearly basis. So it's not part of that 25%, I don't believe. Well, it's sort of a rate stabilization because it's being maintained by the transfer.
Well, the reason I bring it up because we had that cost of service study.
Correct.
And at the time there was a recommendation for a $3 increase.
In the first year.
In the first year. And the board took action to split it up over 3 years.
Correct.
Okay. Plus there was an additional $5 increase that came in later.
As it rolled down the road.
Which was $1 a year for what, 5 consecutive years?
It got up to about a 6 or 7 year. It was $3 the first year, and then there was incremental for the next, I believe, 5 years. There was incremental increases that got it up into the under $30, $27, $28, something like that over time.
Okay, so
can I say something to that? That particular study only studied the cost of service for delivery of water, and it did not incorporate the transfer in any component. That was strictly.
So
it was left out.
$8.50 that they're projecting as a shortfall then is all attributed to the transfer.
I'll have to let Greg answer that because I wasn't involved in moving that number forward, so I don't know. But I know when we did the cost of service study with Intrex, it did not include the water transfer. That was strictly what it would take without the transfer included.
I forgot that item was pulled off the table.
I think that you're
still trying to get it through, aren't you, Director Hanks?
I think your question, Director Hanks, is that you want to establish some sort of bright line between operation and any continuing obligation.
Well, it should be
supplemental.
supplemental. So if it falls out, okay, you should be able to separate it out, those expenditures out.
And the continuing obligation that we have with this would be the O&M contract at this point, because it's not part of the $25 million. That's something that comes on into the water department.
Because on top of that, we still have some trust land expenditures. We also have some mitigation costs where there be no funding, so even though this may not look like that much, you start stacking it on top of the other expenditures.
I think Greg has done some of that, but I just can't answer for him on his financial aspect of that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? This is, again, just an update.
Yeah, the KTT group, is that a specific service agreement just dedicated to KTT? Or are those specific companies? I think David's Engineering.
Okay, those are all in one group, and basically the contract is through David's Engineering, and he subcontracts to Keller Bleisner, to ITRC, which is Dr. Charles Burt, and those folks that he contracts with, which they were the ones that basically did the definite plan as they went through all of that. So they're the ones that have the knowledge of how they thought things would be designed. So our contractors, which are here in the room today, they conferred with him as they went through and built the specs and did all that stuff. Along with, as we built the specs, we involved IT, communications, operations, I don't know how many go-rounds. We've had this thing out through the district, probably 5, 6, 7 go-rounds of looking at it and everybody's comments being incorporated. And we've delayed this, actually, the getting this on the street for a couple weeks just because we still had more comments coming in. We want to make sure everybody's comments were included. So,
well, it is unfortunate that Mr. Broking's not here today, that we couldn't have that water rate study discussion, because there is some concern about the continuing cost of the QSA items that we've already involved with, or further QSA items that we get involved with, such as the definite plan. I'd like to see this come back to us again after we have that discussion with Mr. Broking. Would there be a way for us to review it at that time? That's also coming up on the timetables when the court case will be heard in Sacramento. Would it be
this is just an update
for us to wait to do a better evaluation of where we're at?
This is just an evaluation of where we are, what we've done. It's a quarterly update to where we are, and I think those discussions probably could be asked of maybe Mr. Broking as it's done, and those questions. Unfortunately, he's not here, but I just don't want to make claims that I'm not sure about.
And then in the dollar amount that we've expensed to date, Mike, on this?
On this particular project, I believe we got we had our through September report from PMO day before yesterday, and I believe it was right at, got it right here in my hands actually, $857,591 to date is what we've spent on the program.
And that's out of the original 18 million?
Out of the 18 million, that's correct.
So $8.5 million, more or less.
About 900,000.
900,000. Okay.
And what date, Mike, are we looking at when that 18 million would bump up to the next category of 25 million?
January 1st.
January 1st
of 2012. If we don't have a court ruling by January 1st, or by the end of this December, then next year there's another 7 million. Then that's where the 25 comes into play.
And if we did this type of projects fits the description of the bonding that San Diego's on the hook for sending this money to us. Are there any other kind of systems upgrades or efficiencies or conservation projects we could take part in that would fit also that parameter for the?
In the 25 is the 50 million that was set forward by San Diego for a bump start, you might say, to where we wouldn't have to borrow money to get us going, was designated for system capital projects associated with conservation. And this is part of that. And one of the reasons that we've, as I've said before and has been said before, one of the reasons these were chosen is that the district in the past, over the last number of years, 7, 8, 9 years, have been putting in automated gates with what little finances we had as they come along. We've done all the All-American, we've done all the Central Maine. Some of that was done with some grant money, but we've also completed the Vail Canal system with all automation. And so it's something as a program that we've been moving forward on for a long time. So we will continue to try to move forward on installing automated gates. Also, the delivery measurement devices, I think, are great components to get in, get tested, get tried, and get where we hope they go in and operate right off the bat with no problems. But we have legislation on SB 7X-7 that could possibly, push us into metering of the gates. So here's an opportunity to take and get everything all set up, all done in case. Right now under that, we have an exemption of the QSA on the time limits. If the QSA doesn't go forward, we could be forced to put those in under our own dime. So we think testing those 195 deliveries are going to put it in is going to be very advantageous for moving forward with either direction that this thing heads.
So currently we've spent $875,000.
800, almost 900.
Almost 900,000, right? 857,000, excuse me. Looking at a calendar coming up, when are we looking at moving forward with further significant expenses and commitments?
We're actually, that is through, that's a September report. So we have October, November, December that'll be kind of heavy because our contractors have been working pretty heavily on getting all these documents put together. And we've yet to see all those bills as we move forward on that and getting forward to what we're looking for somewhere in the mid-January range of getting a notice to proceed to move forward with the Phase 1A, Part 1, with the amount of money that we have that we can adjust to either it's $18 million or 25.
So if we get through December, we will have committed the full 18 million that we've already allocated.
We will not have spent it by then. No, we won't have all the money spent. Let's say we get the full 25, we wouldn't have it all spent until March 31st of 2013.
And the KTT group, does that also include CH2M Hill?
No.
And that KTT group, that's a common terminology that we've had for a while, or that's the first time I've heard it tonight.
Internally, we've called them the Knowledge Transfer Team for a long time, but so we shortened that up for an acronym to call it KTT, and so.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you, Mr. King.
You're welcome.
Mike Morgan from Brawley. Actually, I think the timing here could not be better, and I would hope that you direct your new subcommittee that's going to work on your ethics to take this example, go to your ethics trainer, at least the one I went to at your training 3 years ago, and ask him, because specifically at that time he told the IID board that you had to be very mindful, and you had to watch closely consultants that give you other than objective advice. So when you have consultants that create programs and then get contracts in those programs, that you have a possible 1090 violation, which can be onerous. And so I hope your new subcommittee can get some counsel. Don't put it on Vance, don't put it on Jeff, because Jeff's got his busyness. Get it one outside counsel like your ethics person and explain that you've had consultants, Grant Davids, Keller Blisner, ITRC, who created a definite plan, who now are getting funded big contracts that you're not even aware of in the definite plan they developed. You have to look at that. Because if that's not a 1090 violation, there aren't any 1090 violations. And so your new subcommittee should look at that now, because this knowledge transfer team, if you even know what you heard today, who they might be, they were the people who developed the definite plan. And so please look at that. Get your subcommittee to do it. Get your ethics trainer to look at that. Get the names and places. Dr. Eckhart, once-time employee, sometime consultant, sometime whatever, and take a look at how they steered this $18 million to their own pockets.
Okay. Anyone else? We will move on to item number 6, page 30 on your agenda. Water Department General Matters, Mr. Villalon.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Directors. 3 short items. District staff conducted New River Siphon inspection along with the Bureau of Reclamation staff. The reimbursable activities have been completed. We're now pending just contacting or being contacted by the FEMA inspectors, who should be in by the end of this month or before the end of this month. So we can finalize that project and make sure that they're satisfied with the reimbursable part of the work. There's still some maintenance activities we've been conducting, fencing, maybe adding some stairwell for safety purposes. But for all intents and purposes, that project is done. BR has accepted it. Sometime next month in November, we'll come back with some kind of a closeout report after we work at PMO and make sure that costs are in and we have a summary report to present to you.
That's very good news, because at some time back this year there was concern we were going to get it done on time. And so
there's a lot of activities and a lot of steps, but everybody did really, really well.
Good to know. Okay.
And I will notify that staff will be attending IRP, Integrated Resources Planning, Southern California Region meeting in San Diego. And we'll be taking part of that. This is separate and apart from our own IRWMP. That's a regional plan that staff will be attending to. One thing of concern is the Bureau of Water projection. It's up to 103,300 acre-feet today. The Bureau has been recalibrating their accounting procedure now that the Brock reservoir is in. They're still making adjustments. I think that also from a historic perspective, that they're probably underreporting or being conservative on the return flow credits that we get for seepage from NDAC from the heading at Imperial Dam to PK, which is an 18-mile reach that typically seeps back to the river. Normally, the less flow going to Mexico, the lower the river, therefore more seepage, therefore more credit we would get. I think they're being conservative right now. We'll see early part of next year how the adjustments come in. But the return flow credits, they can range from us making water to us losing 120,000 acre feet. There's a big range. Currently, it's really variable, and we will see early next year how those numbers come out.
And you'll keep on top of that? Yeah.
We'll be on a continuing investment working with them, definitely.
Okay. Good. Questions or comments from the board? Director Hanks?
Yeah, with the projection of the overrun, and with the possibility of just having our water cut off early, are we developing any type of plans to stretch this out to make it to the end of the year, short of QSA collapse?
Well, definitely we will be working with the water users, but considering the commodity prices, there are additional irrigation going on with foraging crops. People are trying to get one additional cutting. Commodity prices are excellent, and it's really hard to tell somebody don't irrigate because it's. But we will be working with our water users, letting them know where we are with the projected water usage.
I would suggest maybe at the Water Advisory Board you discuss possibility of some carryovers or some non-critical crops between now and the end of the year. Try to stretch the water.
We will work with Farm Bureau and WCAB, both, definitely.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Villalon.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 7, page 31, Energy Department General Matters. Mr. Ivy?
No comments.
No. Any questions or comments to Mr. Ivy from the board? Nope.
I have to kind of chuckle.
What?
Well, he has no comments. After that closed session, I can understand why he wouldn't have any comments.
I'm going to keep it to myself from now on.
I've got a comment. The closed session reference brings up an item that is public and available there, and this is the short list. There's a short list of currently available of solar projects. Is that correct?
That's correct. We are in the process of PPA negotiations with approximately 4 companies, and then we still have pending the SCAPA shortlisting to come out, which I keep saying is imminent. SCAPA is having some changeover of personnel, and so that's why this is dragging.
And the idea or concept about how many projects would be in the SCAPA shortlist would be the same 4, 5?
It could be. It could be.
And then if something was to happen and those projects couldn't come to fruition, would we go back to the original list?
We have notified the participants, I believe, that we intend to be able to do that if this does fall through.
And the property located off of Dogwood Road, the IID property by Unit 3, which is scheduled for some kind of solar project, is that coming out of the IID shortlist or the SCAPA shortlist?
That one, I believe, is exclusively out of the IID RFP shortlist.
Exclusively on the IID.
2 more from the other? Okay, so a little bit of both.
So ideally, when we get to the finish line here very soon and choose these projects, we'll know who we're going to be going with on the up to 40 megawatts available, and that'll include the Unit 3 Dogwood Via Road property.
That's correct, and this is a very aggressive schedule. We intend to be back to the board in mid-November, as long as we can get through the PPA negotiations quickly enough.
In the San Diego State solar project property up in Brawley, the San Diego State Campus North, are we going to be having a purchase power agreement with them? Are they going to be net metering back? Are we going to get green energy credit for that energy?
We are just now starting the negotiations with that, and as I understand the desire for the community solar, to the extent any other party participates in the program, that they could have access to those recs instead of us. So we're going to be negotiating a PPA kind of on that basis.
So who else could benefit from those recs other than the IID in our own backyard?
Walmarts, Targets, different people that want to play in this game.
And has we always been talked about getting the recs from that project, or is one time were we not talking about getting the recs?
This is relatively new to me, but it's my understanding from what I've just learned recently is that the recs would be part of the community program for the participants. And
so that the IID would get the benefit from that?
If we're purchasing any unsubscribed amounts, we would get the benefit of that.
And if someone is else wanting to do a smaller solar project, say a 2 megawatt project on their own around one of the cities or one of their facilities that use power, would that be just strictly a net metering back project, or would that have the potential to earn credits for the IID as recs?
We can analyze that to see if that's something we can take into our system. We're not obligated to do it, but if it's something that could benefit us, we can take those on.
And can, in that scenario, can you get the recs under both situations where there's net metering? Could you get the recs, or do you have to have a purchase power agreement to get the rec credit?
The way the net metering piece of it works, to the extent you have net generation, we would take claim to the recs for the net generation, and the customer would keep the rest. That's usually an incremental amount.
So that's under a purchase power agreement. But what about on the net metering? Is there any benefit to us for green energy credit if they're just net metering?
If they're just net metering and there's no production that we can claim, no.
And is there a limit at this time under policy at IID as to a certain size of megawatt production that could get in, or do they have to be in the queue to sell their power back to us?
We have prescriptions on megawatt amounts that we would, for example, net meter, and I apologize, I don't know exactly what those amounts are, but we can go up to a megawatt or 2 megawatts. We have just finished signing a PPA for 3, actually, Augustine Casino. So we do have the ability to do that on a PPA basis, especially for the larger ones.
Because in some of these situations, they may actually be using the power a majority of the year, especially in the wintertime when we don't need it. And if it's available for us in the summer, for peak summer, then it'd be advantageous to us to do a purchase of power agreement and get those green energy credits.
And many of these too have a relatively flat load profile. The summer, winter doesn't really matter just a whole lot. So it's still, the amount that you get from a net metering arrangement tends to be incremental, very incremental for us.
But back to net metering, does it go both ways? Can you negotiate net metering where you get green energy credit back to the balancing authority, to the IID?
I'll have to investigate that.
We'll talk offline.
Yeah.
Director Mendel.
How many Unit 3 solar is what, 10 megawatts at the most?
We think we can get up to about 15.
15? Mm-hmm. All right, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? No? Thank you, Mr. Ivey. Moving on to item number 8, page 32 on your agenda. Mr. Escalera, are you the presenter? Update on blackout of September the 8th, 2011.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, General Manager. What we'd like to do is give you a very generic update on the events, sequence of events for September 8th, where the Southwest region who had experienced a major outage that included not only the 2 states, but 4 of the balancing authorities, and included parts of northern Mexico. We have concluded our review of sequence of events. Again, it's it'll be a very generic review, as we are still receiving data requests from the regulatory agencies that are going to review the whole outage for the region, not only us, but of course all of the other affected utilities. We have concluded our initial sequence of events, and these are the copies that were provided to you. We are still continuing to do a more in-depth review on the cause, and will forward that to us once we finalize that, and the regulatory agencies have also had an opportunity to review that. As you well know, on September 18th, 2011, a little before 3:30, an Arizona Public Service crew was working at the utilities North Gila substation, accidentally caused the 500 kV line transmission to relay and out of service. This line runs from the Palo Verde nuclear plant in central Arizona to the North Gila substation located just southwestern Arizona, just east of Yuma. And then it proceeds into the Imperial Valley, into IV substation, and then continues west. The IID owns about 14% of the line. We use this to import power to the IID system. The outage of the transmission, which was being operated by APS, is located, or at least the western portion is located on the California or CalISO balancing authority, and with this outage of the line, it triggered a series of additional events that resulted in the regional outages. While most transmission systems are designed to handle an outage of a transmission line, factors contributing to the cascading set of events that resulted in the regional blackout included a significant amount of import power being brought in from the east to west across the region due to the hot heat wave we were experiencing at that time. The regional imports were further magnified by a significant amount of generation being out of service in the CalISO service region, which normally would have been inputting power into the Imperial Valley substation. Just as a matter of reference, local temperatures in the IID system at that time were hovering about 115 degrees, and we had an initial load of 951 megawatts, which is pretty close to our peak load. At that time, IID had our Centro 3-unit generator out for service, as you are aware, for a major refurbishing effort. We also had Yucca, which was down due to outage of a cooling tower, damage to a cooling tower. Hence, IID was also importing slightly more power than we typically do during this time. IID has two major 230 kV idleries for importing and exporting power, and then we have a moderately significant parts of 161 system, and then some smaller sub-transmission systems. The northern and southern 230 interties are separated. In other words, we don't have a continuous tie from the north-south end of the valley to the north end of the valley in our system, one being the K and KS line, and then we have the S line, but they're separated. And this, of course, does not allow for a significant amount of power in these interties to be transported from the north end of our valley to the south end of the valley, which is significant in the events. While the combination of power systems, preconditions, and the loss of transmissions resulted in an event that eventually took out the IID system, and this is kind of a real quick, generic sequence of events. Following the outage of the 500 kV line that was tripped by APS, the California Independent Operated Generator, producing about 162 megawatts, that was being injected into the Imperial Valley substation, tripped offline. As generation levels were already low in the region, and the loss of this generation not only caused an additional stress on our remaining transmission elements. At the same time, approximately within a few seconds following that outage, the IID Northern 230 intertie, this is up in the Coachella area, saw large increases of amount flowing into the IIC system from the north. Concurrently, on the southern tie of our 230 line intertie, we saw a flow direction of we went from importing power to exporting power with a magnitude. In other words, we swung about 200 megawatts. We were importing at that time roughly under 100 megs. Due to the events, we started to export 100 because as the system drew from it. On the northern end, we have, which is our 230 inner ties are not corrected as mentioned before. As we were trying as the system is having power inflows from the north end, it was attempting to somehow get to the power line because that's what the demand was. And since we have no inner ties between our 230 systems, it attempted to go through our sub-transmission system, which is our 161 and 92K system, which is not designed to handle those kind of loads. At the Coachella Valley substation, we lost 2 of the transformers were disconnected from the system as they were being overloaded 150% of their rating. This is power that was being drawn into the system. These automatic disconnects are in place to protect the system and the transformers, as you will need them to get back on once the emergency is over. There's 3 major transformers that serve the Coachella area, including these two. Including these 2 ones in CV Valley. The loss of the 2, of course, put a tremendous stress on the northern system, which caused the 3rd transformer at the Ramon substation to disconnect on an overload, and this caused the northern section, or the Coachella area, to black out. With the loss of power flowing from the north intertie, the system was relying now on the southern part on local generation and the few imports that we had from the southern intertie. There's a CAL-ISO transmission protection scheme at IV sub that's designed, if it sees an abnormal flow of energy, to drop our 230 kV intertie in it, and that's what it did. It actually severed our connection to the substation, and again, it's designed to do this. This operation fully disconnected generation from the south, and with absent no additional supporting imports, the remaining IID energy system began to black out. Our relays opened to properly protect the district's generators and equipment. I want to stress that this is what they're designed to do. They're designed to protect the system in events such as this. The whole event, from the IID's first relay operation to the last look, slightly took more than 10 minutes by the time we lost all power. With the loss of additional generating from the south interjecting into the Imperial Valley, and remember, this is a pass-through, a tipping point was reached and San Diego system began to black out due to high imports from the remaining sources of the San Diego overload system, so they went black. At this time, once the event was over, IID had no reports of damaged electrical equipment because due to the event, and we were able to effectively restore power within about 4 hours to about 90% of our 144,000 customers. The remaining customers, which were scattered throughout the system, were restored late that night or early next morning. Everything that we've looked at in staff reports, that under the circumstances, the system conditions that existed, the protection schemes worked the way they were supposed to. They're designed to protect themselves so that you are able to then to come back after the event and bring yourself back up, which is demonstrated in the short time that we were able to bring the system back up.
That's very good to know. Now, do you have this summary for the public if they would
yes,
like
I left some additional copies on there. Again, they're purposely very generic. We were working on a much more detailed report, but until we've had a chance to vet it through the regulatory agencies, we want to kind of let them have their opportunity to go over it.
Questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I got a question. Yes. Marla, the baseload production of the hydros that the IID has, and then the other geothermals that were operating in our IID BA, what happened to their power? Did their get shut down too, back to their facilities, or did some of the lines stay hot?
No, we lost all power. I mean, it took about 10 minutes, but the cascade basically took all of the system off, primarily on the generations. The geothermals, I believe, kept going for quite a while, and in fact, I believe they still exported. Did they not, Joel?
The geothermal generators that are connected to the KNKS stayed on the whole time.
Yeah, they were able to export.
Well, that's interesting. So the KNKS line, or the FACA lines as they call them, they stayed on and stayed lit up the whole time.
Yes, because they're able to separate themselves from our system. And what brought us down, without going into a lot of detail, because I'm sure this will become public record because this is a major event, was the system brought down because we had a tremendous amount of power that was trying to reach. Energy is like water. It tries to seek its the least path of resistance. And what it did is we had a tremendous draw at the south end of the valley when we lost the line. So we actually, the energy was trying to flow from the Coachella down through IID to feed that need at the bottom. And we don't have a system to design that. And that's what took our system out.
But the KN and KS lines, they were flowing north, right?
They were flowing north.
And then where they go into the Edison area up there, is that close to where Edison went out also?
Well, Edison lost very few customers.
Right.
They goes into CV and then goes into Ramon.
The KN and KS lines kind of bypass that local Edison grid and goes more toward an export route.
Well, it ties into the Edison grid at I believe Ramon.
At Ramon.
Well, I think if we use Cal Energy's power during that outage, we at least send Mark a thank you letter.
I don't think. Actually, it was flown the wrong way.
Oh, well, okay.
I think if you ask them, they'll tell me so. But again, without a detail, our sequence of events shows it was flown the other way.
Let's try to keep this conversation very general.
Yes,
please.
I'm trying to.
That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything wrong, but just keep the conversation very general.
Okay.
Director
Thank you.
Desert, thank you. No further comments. We'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Escalera.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 9, page 33, energy cost adjustment update for September 2011.
Good afternoon, Board. Sandra Ainsworth, the Controller Energy Department. I've got an update for you on the September ECA. If you can see, the numbers are a little bit small. Essentially, the fuel and purchase power costs for the month of September, the preliminary figures equal about approximately $23 million. And of that, 16.3 are passed through the ECA calculation. So we've got the power supply costs of the $16 million that are ECA applicable, ran that through the calculation. We have an under collection that was cumulative for the months of July and August of $2.2 million. So when we run that through the calculation, we come up with, if we had we're truly floating that and adjusting the ECA on a monthly basis, the preliminary projected ECA for September would be 3.13 as compared to the current rate of 4.19. And that results in an additional over collection for the month of September of approximately $1.2 million to bring the cumulative July through September over collection to $3.5 million.
Okay, questions?
Any specific questions?
Where's the 1.1 million listed for the September?
The way the calculation rolls is it brings in the previous under collection, so you'll see the under prior period ECA balance account, the 2.2, then it runs down through the bottom, and then you see the total 3.5. So the 1.2 is the difference between the 3.5 million and the 2.2 carryover from the previous 2 months.
Okay, and the last report we had on the ECA, we had some questions about the $2 million. It looked like up to $2 million of over collection for the month of August.
Correct.
Do we have any better explanations as to why?
We're still taking a closer look, and we're confident. We've looked at it close enough that we're confident that, as I discussed last month, or the last time that I presented it with the August ECA, that there are some cells that are crossing between months while we're doing the rerouting, and we anticipate that will be complete in November, and then we'll.
So historically, we're looking at July was 250,000 over collection, August was 2 million, and September was 1 million.
An additional 1.2 million, that's correct. And I just want to reinforce that these are preliminary figures because of the actual accounting closing process, that we hadn't gotten all the actual invoices in yet, but it should be a pretty good estimate.
Okay, questions, comments from the board? And this is an update.
Yes, it is. But I do have a question for the board. In the package that we submitted, we included not only the information in this slide, but we included the information, the calculation for September and then July through September. And my question to the board is this format working for you, or is there another way that you'd like to see it, or some additional information that is not being provided? We want to make sure that this is useful to you.
I'm still trying to find the current month of August's 1.2 million.
Again, that's going to be the difference between the 3.5 and the over/under collection, the very bottom line, because that is essentially a cumulative. Since it rolls forward, that is cumulative, and that's the difference between that and the previous carry forward.
And that previous carry forward is listed.
That's the 2.251. I believe it's 2.251.
Where's it at?
That's what you have, Sandra.
2.261.
Excuse me, Sandra. What you have up there is not what's in our packet.
What you have in your package is you have the month of September, and then you have July through September. In an attempt to show you year to date since we started floating the ECA. And that's my question, is if that is useful or if that is confusing for the board, or if there's another way that you would like to see it presented to you.
Okay, but she has this one here. This is fine for cross-reference. It's just kind of confusing when you see that one and this one, but it makes sense. Director Mendel?
Yeah, no, from my standpoint, we said that we were going to publicly say what the over collection was for each month or whatever, at least give the numbers out there to the public so they know what the numbers are. So that's what you're doing.
Okay.
We're being transparent about what we said we were going to do.
Right, and so that you know what will actually be posted on the website is the document that you did receive in your package with both September budget actuals and July through September budget actuals.
Okay.
I'd Sandra, if you could, the cumulative, if you could break it down by month as we move forward on this, just show what July's was and show what August was and show what September's was.
I can do that.
Okay, just a real simple spreadsheet that the public could read, I think would be helpful.
We can do that. We'll bring that back to you for
I was
the
thinking it
next
could
month.
just be on this page, but
yeah, that'd be fine.
On this page.
We can do that, or actually put one additional slide because it's getting a little crowded in there. We can do that very easily. Yes, sir.
I think you have enough room on the bottom of the page. Just do it all in one.
We'll fit it in there.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, page 35 in your agenda, renewable portfolio standards. Mr. Gutierrez, are you the presenter?
For sure.
That's all.
What does COP?
Good afternoon, President Mendoza, Director Desert, Vice President Jean-Pierre Manville, and Mr. Hanks, President Hanks. I'm sorry, Director Hanks. Noé Gutierrez, I'm going to try to present to you the renewal portfolio standards, kind of where we are right now, what are the... Go to the next page. I have a very brief agenda. And I'll try to present where IID is on this existing and projected portfolio. What are the challenges of renewable integration and what are the recommendations to get where we need to get through the years. I have 4 charts in here with the intent of present where we are right now on the renewable portfolio standards. We are about 7% on renewables right now. The rest is just conventional energy. For 2020, we need to be 33% on renewables and 67% of conventional energy. The third chart at the bottom on the left side gives us the average of the renewable prices that we are seeing at this point. Of course, those prices change as time passes and different offers come to us. But this is one of the ways that we think we could get there. And you can see is by compliance period, which is the first one is 2011 to 2013. Second compliance period is from 2014 to 2016. And the third compliant period is a 4-year period, is from 2017 to 2020. And as you all know, we need to average 20% renewables on at the end of 2013. And we need to get to 25% on the second period and to 33% on the third compliance period. And of course, there's all kinds of components for those compliance period. Anyway, if we take a picture today of what the fossil fuel energy is right now, is the green trending that you see on the whole 10-year compliance period. The way the renewable energy looks right now for us on the things that we can do in the next 10 years is in the red line, and you can see some kind of different slopes through the years, and it's because you do different things and different technologies are available. And you integrate as technologies come and as you do power purchase agreements with different people. Is there any question in this one?
Questions or comments? Go on.
Thanks. Pretty much the challenges on renewable integration are nothing new. Everybody's aware of it. The renewable generation technologies that we have for the valley pretty much have been considered historically as 3: solar, geothermal, and biomass. And as we mentioned before, biomass are very scarce and almost non-existent from the Imperial Valley. Is one of the concerns that was brought in, so it shouldn't even be probably there. Solar has certain hours of production minus cloudy days and requires daily available fossil capacity and shoulder hours. It's a great resource. It's megawatt hours that we need during the day. But at the end, it requires a little bit of fossil generation on the beginning of the generation of the solar and at the end of the day. So it's a challenge. I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's a little bit of a challenge there. Then when we talk about geothermal, it's base load, and if we do too much of that, it displaces must-take and spot market opportunities. So it's a great resource again, 724, a lot of megawatt hours. So that really helps a lot because the capacity factor for geothermal is close to the 95%. You talk about capacity factor in solar varies anywhere from 22 to 33%. We've seen different depending on technologies, trackers, and calibration on the inverters. So with that in mind, there's only so much room for each technology. We've studied this, and we can do about 65 megawatts of solar for the next 7 years, 10 years scenario, without having to invest drastically on fossil generation to back those systems. And if we consider that in the solar side, distributed generation is one of the options, IID's distribution circuits are not always ready for integrating 5, 10, 20 megs on them. It's on a case-by-case basis. You can do 2 to 3 megs sometimes just 1. So this is like the case of the San Diego State that you were asking before. How many megs can we really do that? It takes a little bit of power flow study to really see what is it that you need, that you can do there without investing heavily on making it work. And of course, on geothermal capacity is limited to IID's baseload profile. In 2017, we need about 55 megs. When you get to 2020, you will do 75 megs. You will be in that range, depending on what is it that you can do through the years to get to your 33%.
So 2017 would be how many?
We could do up to 55 megs, 3 projects of 18 megs each. Or we can do 25 megs spaced different to get to 75 megs.
Okay.
Any question on this slide?
Just comments? No. Go on, please.
Okay. The next one, and this is the last one, is pretty much the recommendations based on the brief discussion we just had. Is keep promoting the local renewable development by using the competitive procurement practices that we've been doing for the last few years.
It works, it's good, it's defensible, and it's the best for the ratepayers. Keep using the tools and mechanisms implemented by SB 2X1 as much as we can. Keep developing the renewable portfolio standard for IID that promotes, of course, the least impact to the ratepayers, that doesn't compromise the district reliability, and will avoid penalties for non-compliance. Then we need to integrate renewables by having a renewable generator. As I was saying before, we have the challenge to have renewables integrated, and you need to back your system, like the solar system, with a fossil fuel generation plant. Well, the best choice for that, or the best option to integrate that, is having a load following unit, or a unit that can be dispatched or be move around, whatever you need on your shoulder hours or at the beginning of your on peak. And that'll be the case of a Centro 3 power. We think we can burn 4,500 MMBtu per day of biogas, and that will be the lowest cost for renewable energy, and totally supportive of the reliability of the system. Then we need to keep working on developing both valleys by promoting projects that make sense in both sides of the valleys. So by 2020, we should have both projects in Imperial and projects in the Coachella area as much as we can without compromising the cost of doing that. And then we would use the biogas to support efficient units, which is a Centro 3. It's going to be, from our studies, from our perspective, 7,500 heat rate is going to be better than the market most of the year. So we could use a little bit of biogas there. And of course, always have the least cost impact on our ratepayers. With that, I will leave it to any questions.
Questions, comments? Director Hanks?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes.
We've touched just briefly on biomass, and it doesn't seem to be much interest. I don't know whether it's the fuel's not available or what the issue is. But Mr. Johnson's here. He knows a little bit about biomass. And Rod Williams is here. He knows a little bit about growing biomass. And I was just wondering if, we have the issue of the Salton Sea and the playa. If there is the potential of growing some type of biomass on that. What I'm looking at is, and I'll address this to Mr. Kelly, has there ever been any talk about turning that area into a mitigation bank? The playa and look at some of these issues?
I think it has been touched on at the board level, but I don't think it's been. I don't believe it's a ripe area just yet.
Probably need proof of concept and the whole works, huh? One other question on the fines for failure to meet the RPS. How is that structured? Is it the percentage that you miss by, or is it you just miss and you just get fined, or how's it structured?
The details have been under a lot of scrutiny and discussion and comments back to ARB and CEC and all those guys. But so far, the way it's been talked is $50 per megawatt hour that you're not there, capped to $25 million per compliance period. So you don't get there, they would estimate.
Compliance period is how long?
3 years in the first one, 3 years in the second one, and 4 years in the third compliance period.
We need to average 20% in this current upcoming 3-year period.
Yes, sir. That's what we need to do. Average 20%. Whatever you miss based on, not on your wholesale, but on your retail load, you will be evaluated, and you come short, you got to pay penalties. That's the way it looks now. That might change tomorrow, but...
It would have been interesting on slide 3 if you would have had a line with a fine calculated into this, where we've missed. See what that cost would look like.
I have that number. I can provide it to you. Yeah, actually, if we don't do what we have to do, we would be paying penalties a year at the first compliance period.
Because I think whenever you start looking at meeting these standards and existing RFPs that's out there, which direction we go, and whether if we go Rex and for whatever reason they're not available, we got to find, what is the risk. I'd kind of like to see that weighed out and help to make a decision whether we just try to pick up some more local renewables or.
Yeah, we're making any effort to pick up as much as we can local renewables, as you were saying. If we do a PPA right now, say on solar, it's going to take a year and a half. So we're almost at the end of the first compliance period when we start producing on, on any project on solar right now. So we're hoping that by 2013 we have solar projects generating, but it's kind of a challenge. Then if we do a PPA today on a geothermal contract, it's going to take 4 years at least, or typically 5. So we're talking 2017 when we start seeing megawatts produced from those projects. Unless we tap into existing projects, that I don't see many of those available. Those are already sold under a PPA or something like that.
Well, we kind of hedge out on our fuel bill, on our purchase of fuel. We don't really look for the best price or the worst price,
Yeah, we can do a scenario analysis.
And that's why I'd like to know what this would look like if we have a kind of a projected best case with the REX and so forth. But if we didn't meet it, and there was a fine placed in there, what would that look like then?
Yes.
Is that the best way to go? I'd like that information and help them make a decision.
It gets really bad. It's $50 per megawatt hour, and then you don't get anything. No economic development, no nothing other than a penalty. So your rates go really high. But I have those numbers somewhere. I can provide them to you if you want me to.
But that's when you're going to come back and give us another update.
I'm sorry?
When are you going to come back and give us another update?
I think the plan is for them to be back next month.
On a monthly basis?
Well, from here on out, it won't be a surprise to the board. It's certainly not a reflection on the diligent work that's been going on with Noe and his group. But IID is behind, and
really,
and IID faces certain challenges, not the least of which is the process by which solar is permitted and hopefully built in the Imperial Valley. So you saw it there that solar figures into our resource mix. I think it's 65 megawatts at tops.
That's what it is.
But there are things that can be done, and I know there are things that are being pursued that will require a more regularly occurring report to the board.
Yes, we have a plan to avoid penalties, and we will avoid penalties.
Director Mendel, did you have comments?
Yeah, Director Hanks, I think you asked about biomass being grown on the playa.
Yes.
There was some work. I know one of the QSA lawyers had tasked some IID staff to look into seeing if there was any type of plants that could grow on the playa to see if there was something that could be done there. I know James Lowe, the gentleman that has the bamboo out here at, where is that, Ayton and Dogwood, wanted to see about doing some of that. And I think Rod Williams has looked into some of that, growing biomass on the playa. So there's been a little bit of work done on it, and they were talking about using drain water and things like that. But, that involves building a $200 million plant and generating electricity or whatever. And but I mean, it's a possibility, but not from our internal system, I don't believe.
Yeah.
But that's the deal with the mitigation on the sea.
I think it was halophyte. Halophyte. They were.
Yeah, that's what it was. Halophytes.
Any other question?
Rob has something.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you'll come back within another 30 days for an update?
Yes, actually, we're going to come back to the board requesting, for information purposes, with the results of the RFP that we're negotiating and the SCAPA. And then hopefully by November 15, that's our goal, if everybody agrees to what we want, to have presenting the board with final PPAs to be signed.
Good luck. Right.
Thanks.
Mr. Williams, thank you. Mr. Williams, do you have something to say?
Rod Williams, local farmer. I don't have anything really prepared. This is just off the cuff, but to the board, I have spent a lot of time with Roy Long out at IVRR. That was initially it was the first permitted biomass receiving plant in Southern California that could receive BCAP material. And as we know now, the funding from the Ag Department, a lot of it's been cut. There is still some BCAP money available. The plant was shut down last February timeframe. Loss of employment, approximately 30 full-time employees. The capacity of that plant is approximately 18 to 20 megawatt. The other plant that Green Hunter has that's to the south, which I don't know all the inner dealings of the current PPA. I know what Roy has told me about the potential to purchase that and merge those two plants. But roughly, for you to go out and build a new plant and permit the plant, the IVRR plant is permitted. Currently, it could be fired up operating in 60 days. It needs some work done to the turbine. Some of the boiler feeds, some of the piping needs to be redone because it was never structurally brought back to integrity after the earthquake. But all of the turbine's been opened up. There's been a study done on it. They know exactly what the costs are going to be associated with it. My thought to the IID, knowing your situation with renewables and where you need to be, those two plants could be bought and combined and make a very functional operation for Imperial Valley with approximately 40 megawatts of production, and it could be all online as the permitting for the second plant came into place, which Roy thinks will take approximately 1 to 1.5 years on the second half. But for the cost of solar, and I'm not dissing solar. I think solar is a great opportunity, but you're sitting here with two plants that are idled. You need renewable energy. We now know that we have biomass plants that have been genetically modified at Texas A&M, and Director Menville and I sat in a meeting with both the Cirrus company and another meeting that Chromatin was involved in. Both companies have genetics to raise grain sorghum that they can grow in high salt tolerant ground with salt water. Now that's what they tell us. It has to go through a year to prove that in some phase. And I did meet with Bruce Wilcox a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to have another meeting with him. I would like to be on the bottom floor of trying to help with the playa mitigation, because I could foresee where the IID has the ability to do a closed loop biomass system. Those two plants out there can be put up in operating order and produce approximately 40 megawatts, 38 to 40 megawatts of electricity for less than 25 cents on the dollar of what it would cost to put in 40 megawatts of solar. And so and if you could move fast enough, there's a $9 million grant that's already completed and ready to receive back, but it has to be done, I think, by the end of the year, maybe the end of November. And it's on the IVRR plant, and the attorneys have all signed off on it. I have been in contact with the company that has been hired to sell the IVRR plant. I know what those numbers are. The other plant, Roy contacted the people that are involved in it, the Green Hunter plant, and between the two of us, we think I'd say it's 95% that the cost would be 25 cents on the dollar for a megawatt for what solar would cost to have them both up and running. And it would employ probably, if you merge the two plants and you do a closed biomass system, raise your own commodities to feed the plants, you're probably looking at 75 to 80 employees. So that's something you could look at. It's a positive thing. Feel free to call or have your general manager call me. I'll be glad to give you any information I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Mendoza and directors. My name's Chuck Johnson. I'm with Coal Green Energy. We're developing a large solar project up in North Shore in the southern part of Coachella Valley. Many of you know me. I've been in the renewable energy business for over 25 years here in the Imperial Valley. I go back to the FACA agreement, Matt. It's standard for not what it sounds like, but the funding and construction agreement. We had a nickname for it. I won't tell you, but I was with Hank Legaspi back when we came up with that for the 230 kV line. But I go back to Magma Power, all the way back to the Geos and Heber Geothermal and putting that project together. But long story short, today, we're way behind the curve here in the valley. The district is. Joel, Noy, the power department, your general manager are doing a very good job, but they are limited in scope of what they're doing. We've got a train wreck coming. It's going to be akin to the water problems you've been fighting for the last 10 years coming electricity. Governor Brown signed a bill that the state mandated on you, this 33%, the end of April, basically saying the gun's cocked. You got, Noy didn't have it. We've done the analysis. The penalties are huge. That was Noy's words. You're looking at a cap of $25 million per year. If you do nothing, and I'm not proposing they are doing something, but the magnitude of it could be $150, $200 million to the district in penalties between now and basically when it kicks in 2013 through 2020, and then going there annually after. Now, Kevin and I have had discussions on how there are some exemptions and possibility around it, but this is deemed to be the center of the earth, literally, for renewables, and show me the renewables. I mean, look at the ag situation we had the last board meeting buzz through here, and the county issues on developing projects. You need to look at all viable projects. I don't care what it is. Yeah, I have one solar project. Anything that's permitted is very important. Anything that isn't, there's a lot of obstacles in front of it. Pricing? Yeah, pricing. I can bid a penny. Is that a real number? Until you get into detailed engineering and EPC work, you have no idea. You're guessing price. Every price is bait and switch. I know that's a criteria with ratepayers. We have a very destitute community here. I live here. I've been here all my life. And we have to do something about it. We can't take this kind of penalty. Now, you as a board, your manager, your power department, you have some great people, but you need to give us some direction to move. By not doing anything now and allowing us to get in some of the cash grant availability by year end, is basically going to, I don't care if it's my project or any project, it's going to raise the price of basically a half a cent per kilowatt hour for not getting the loan grant. And you have to be going before the year end. So the issue here is not, what we're doing, is we're not doing enough. I've had some comments with general manager and power manager, meetings with them, some of you directors I've spoke to. The magnitude of this is huge, and the dollars for us to employ you to move forward on the viable projects, those that are permitted should have a great big star by them. Our project is permitted. It's one of the few in Coachella Valley. Segue over to biomass for a moment. Director Hanks alluded to it. I co-founded 25 years ago Colmac Energy, the Mecca plant that you drive by going up by Mecca on the highway there on the right side. We burn 1,200 tons a day of bone dry, not green, it's 1,500 green, 1,200 bone dry tons a day of wood waste. Now, the gentleman prior to me talking about what I call it the Brawley plant, because that goes way back, or Hydroco, even further, the IVR plant, and the old manure burner. We originally looked at manure, and it was a shitty fuel, no pun intended. It eats up your boiler, which happened out here. These two projects on the highway out here are 1/3 the size of our project. Ours was 50 megawatts, these are 15. We've looked at buying those over the years. They're viable. Why am I doing solar? Because biomass is the most expensive and hardest renewable energy to generate, and it's base load. As Noy was previously saying, the problem is, and the power department knows it well, is that you're looking at a very unique load base here of in the winter, you can hardly take anything. I question 75 megawatts is huge at Geo. It's more like 25 in our analysis, but whatever it is. We're doing solar because when the sun shines, you need peak power. Go back and get your power reports. We've traced them back for 20 years. and done analysis. Some of you have some of the information, but basically we paid some obnoxious prices for peak power in the past. Now, biomethane sounds great. Biogas is just like the RECs were a big deal. Well, the state's already got legislation pending to limit out-of-state biogas coming in. We did a whole analysis here this week. There's only going to be enough biogas generated in this entire country to generate 300 megawatts for the whole country. Now, can it be used limitedly? Yes. Also, it's a pricing. It's natural gas price today at $4, give or take, a million BTUs, plus the premium above it, which is about $7, quoted yesterday when we were trying to price it and buying it. It'd be 11 cents for just your fuel. Now, you can arbitrage that and make it work. And you can do certain things, but you've got to do a really lot of smart things. Now, Director Hank's inquiry and John Pierre's as to the salt and sea issue. I've looked at that 3 times, going back 20 years ago. In fact, he mentioned sweet sorghum. Ironically, we were looking at doing that in our project, in our biomass. 25 years ago, I went back to Texas A&M and met with a guru back there on it. They're high volume yields. The problem with biomass is very expensive. I was going to add another 25 megawatts next to our 50 megawatt up in Coachella, in Mecca. It was going to cost me, we bid into Edison, it was going to cost me more to build 25 megawatts than it did for me to build the entire plant 12 years prior. When we bid in at a reasonable price, it was so far off the scale we didn't make the short list because of pricing. So we basically said, well, biomass, we love it. I helped set up the California Biomass Energy Alliance for all the biomass in California and the US one also. But right now they're dying industries. They're effectively, you're going to have very few biomass. We might be able to do, as he's suggesting, on a limited scope, but it's not going to solve your renewable mandate problem. And I suggested the board embrace this. This train wreck's coming. Kevin knows it, Joel knows it, and we're happy to work with them. I implore you to move forward very quickly to get some of the expiring available benefits that we can utilize, viability. The permitting is going to kill you, and it is killing projects, and God knows where this ag buzzsaw we're in is going. Hopefully it won't hurt us too bad. And then pricing. We got to look at, do you have real numbers? Is someone ready to step up and start turning shovel ready tomorrow or not? So I asked the board to give some direction and continue doing what you're doing, but do a whole lot more of it, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Got a question. Chuck, on your biomass plant in Coachella, how many megawatts did that produce?
I call it 50, but for your purpose, 49.
And how much fuel did it need every day to feed it?
If you're talking bone-dry tons, which I learned after the truckers wetted down the trucks coming in the early days, for dust control, mind you, but bone-dry ton, John Pierre, it's 1,200 tons a day, or green ton, it's about 1,500. Okay. So you're in farming, that's a lot of material per day. Also, just one last thing on biomass, just for planning purposes, Jim, this goes back to salt and sea issue. When we permitted that project, we were going to displace a lot of open field burning. And one issue you got to look on technology. In fact, Graham here, many of you knows much more than I do on this. But they had the problem out here in the IVR project, and that was a lawsuit when it was originally built, is you end up with slagging. We couldn't burn 5% of our fuel utilization in Mecca could not be locally grown wheat straw or Bermuda straw because it had too much salinity in it and too many chlorides, and it corroded your inside your boiler, and it also created slagging, and so you become inoperative. So you have it's a highly technical area. It can be done. We'd love to work with the district on doing something. I think your mitigation idea out there is good, but it could be a piece of your puzzle. But it's sure not going to solve your renewable energy 33 mandate.
Okay. Director Hanks?
Yeah, my concern on our RFP process, we're so focused, and probably rightfully so, the bottom line for our ratepayers. And under traditional circumstances, that would probably work. Yeah, you could hold off.
Absolutely.
Now that you have these timelines, fines, permitting issues, and not knowing what's going to happen with it, they get permit. I'm very leery about shortlisting down to 4. I don't know how many of those 4 are going to be able to make it. And then you start the process over, and we all know about the production credits, you know, with the deadline that being at the end of the year. So, you know, I mean, timelines are very, very tight. And if we get down and put all our eggs in one basket, and only one comes through, then we're right back where we started. I'm not sure that the criteria that we use is sufficient to make the decision that we have to make timely right now. That's my concern.
Mr. Hanks, one comment, if I may, President Mendoza, to what you're saying. I agree totally. Up until the mandate that was signed by the state and the governor signed, and then the legislature passed it and put it on the munis, the IOUs already had this mandate. We all know that. You had a policy. Well, policies are one thing. Laws that have teeth in it are another thing. The issue I have, I think it's worse than we're back to where we are. You're worse. You got these penalties coming up because you're going to pay, whether you pay more for renewable energy or you pay in penalties. You're going to be paying a whole lot more here, guys. I'm sorry to announce that if you don't know it, in a few years. And if you're going to get on by 2013, whoever's going to get in, just like Noe just said, if you're going to get in a project that's operating by then, you got to have somebody that's permitted and ready to start right away. We are. There are a few others that are. But anybody that hasn't gone through the process, just to permit. These ag ones, I predict the ag ones will probably get through eventually, but they're going to get kicked into the EIR process, and you're looking at a 2-year delay minimum to go do the permitting process. And so you're going to, it's which is the best of the two devils, because you're looking at extremely high pricing here at $50 a megawatt, it's 5 cents a kilowatt hour penalty. Right now, if you did nothing, here, just put a magnitude. You need, by 2020, you need somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 million megawatt hours. And think in megawatts, we talk in megawatt, but technically megawatt hours, because solar peaks up in the daytime and doesn't do much at night, does it? But it's hours produced. And you're sitting here now, Noe just said, it's 6.8%, he rounded to 7. But it's basically, you're looking at about 250,000 megawatt hours. So you're $1 million short. Don't do anything, multiply that times $50. Now, what saves you is they cap it at 25 million a year. But those are huge numbers. Now, I think we can get there, guys. Don't get me wrong. I'm an optimist. But damn, we got to get going. And you got to give these folks the ability to take it off. I applaud, and look at the projects. Pricing is very, very important. Don't get me wrong. But until you have detailed engineering, I've been in this business 25 years. I've built plants. You don't know what the price is till the deal's done and the financing's done. And we can, I can make a deal with you. I won't ask any names, but there's other projects around that we know that have come back many times for you over the last history in this board or the last 10 years, asking for price changes. Oops, after we've already made a deal. And we know several of those that aren't even around today like that. I mean, pick the viable ones. I mean, we selected a large EPC contractor, the Boeing company. They're standing tall, backstopping our project and guaranteeing it. Okay? They can build airplanes, they can probably build the solar project they designed 25 years ago for satellites. And we need to do it. You're sitting here, you have a rare opportunity. I've told a couple of you, I told Joe, go long on solar, because you're going to find yourself sitting here with the ability, there's going to be a shortage. The low hanging fruit has been picked, guys. The easy projects be permitted or done, and they've already been sold the IOUs. How much has gone over the hill that is bypassing you?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No? We will go on then to item number 11, page 41. Presentation of the 2012 budget. This is the first draft.
Good afternoon, President Mendoza, members of the board. Ed Hall, Deputy Manager of Financial Services. Today we're providing you the first version of the complete draft of the 2012 budget. There will be actually a presentation and overview of the budget on November 1st, which is in 2 weeks. So today we're just
business meeting. Or it's going to be like a workshop at 5 o'clock?
No, this will be a regular business meeting. During the regular business meeting, it will be presented for information and more of an overview on that date. Today, we're giving it to you today in order to give you some time to look at it, so that you have, maybe some good feedback and good questions for the November 1st presentation.
Okay, and then we'll have
what
a workshop on the 15th?
Yeah, well, I was going to go over the calendar here with you really quickly.
Okay,
So
all right.
so November 1st, we will give you the presentation and overview. That will be followed by presentations to the WCAB on November 9th and to the ECAC on November 14th in La Quinta. Then there will be 2 workshops, one on November 15th here in El Centro, and then a second workshop on December 6th in La Quinta. Okay. There will also be one final presentation and overview to the ECAC on December 5th that will be here in El Centro. And then it's planned that the final budget will come before the board on December 13th.
Okay.
So really all we're doing today is just giving you a copy of the budget. As you know, the last presentation, it was only the centralized services and power budget. So this will give you the complete budget to review prior to November 1st presentation.
Okay, Ms. Rivera, for the November 1st meeting for the overview, do we plan to have a very long agenda for that meeting?
I have no idea at this time.
Because we need to allow enough time to go over the budget numbers, so they're going to need at least 45 minutes. So put them toward the end, so that we can get all the business done in front, and then spend as much time as we can over the overview of the budget. And then when we do the workshop, it'll be like at 5 o'clock after a board meeting? Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on then to item number 12, page 42, 2003 Energy Revenue Certificates of Participation Refunding.
Good afternoon, Madam President, Board of Directors, and public. Teresa Perez with the Finance Department, and just presenting an overview of the financing plan that we have. The 2003 certificates of participation were entered into in 2003, October 2003 they were approved. They do go out through 2034, and the current market, excuse me. All right, this is the first time I've had to use this little thing, so. All right. Hold on. Thank you. Okay, is it this side? Okay. So the current market, excuse me for that, the current market conditions are affording the district the ability to have some savings on refunding a portion of the 2003 bonds. We're looking to refund between 21 million to about $25 million, depending on the market. There are about $64.9 million outstanding of these bonds, and we would be looking to refund just a portion of them. Our target is to have a minimum of 5% of present value savings. If you look, the range there is between just under $1 million and over $1.7 million. And this will all it all is dependent upon what the market conditions have been. The $950,000 was actually as of October 10th. So between October 3rd and October 10th, the market has moved that much, and so we'll see what our results are. This will consist of revenue bonds since we're doing a refunding, and we do plan to price the bonds in November. Again, it's contingent upon whether our percentage of savings is there. If it is not there, we will not move forward with the refunding. We may delay it, but we'll be looking to have the authorization to move forward so that if market conditions do present themselves,
take advantage of it.
We'll be in a good position to take advantage. What we will be bringing is we'll be bringing this back to you for approval on November 1st. We will be looking for you to approve certain documents, the authorizing resolution, which will give us the authorization to move forward, the preliminary official statement, the continuing disclosure certificate. I think you've seen quite a bit of them this year. The escrow agreement, the bond purchase agreement, and then also the final official statements. Copies were made available on the website as well as at the Secretary's office, and I did have a couple of copies here in the back, and I think there might still be one, but if anyone needs copies, just let me know. And here is our timeline. Like I said, we will be back on November 1st to seek approval of the financing. If market conditions are right, we will be distributing the preliminary official statement to potential investors, pricing November 9th and closing this on November 17th. Again, this is all contingent on whether how the market is doing and if it makes sense for us to refund.
Okay.
Any questions?
No, does Mr. Hunt have anything to read into the record today?
I don't know if you want it today or next week. We usually do it on the approval.
That's not necessary for the information meeting. Unless you're answering for it.
No. So you have to sit through the whole meeting. You don't have to say a word.
Any questions from the board or the public?
Just bring it back on the 1st and bring Mr. Hunt with you on the 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on. Item number 13, page 70 has been pulled from the agenda, so we will move on to item number 14, page 82, internal auditing section. Mr. Kaiser.
Yes, good afternoon, directors.
How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I have a little update here on our on internal audit sections, audits in process. Currently, we have 8 audits in process. 2 of those will be reported on the 1st of November. That will be the CSP process audit and the power and trading process review. Those reports will be given on the November 1st. We're starting 2 new audits. One will be a payroll process audit. The schedule is being worked on right now. And an audit of Coral's activities, which we're scheduling.
Good.
We're scheduling the audit plan at this particular point in time, and those will be in process. The other 4 are, we have a cash audit in process, customer service, accounts payable audit process, starting out. We're doing the water inventory this week.
A water inventory?
Water inventory, water department inventory. They're taking an inventory Thursday.
Of the water?
No, the store.
Oh, the
yeah,
store.
we're counting, no, not of the water, of the inventory items in the water department.
Tom has been
I'll be going to Lake Mead and counting gallons. Probably won't be back for about 13, 14 years.
Go on.
Thanks. Boy, you really threw me off on that one.
I'm sorry, I heard you say
that's
water inventory.
They've been sending notices out to start. Water's going to be closed. You haven't been.
Yeah, well, I saw that, but you said water. Never
I'm
mind.
trying to hold on here, you know.
Sorry, go on. You're doing
I'll be
very
running
well.
out of the room pretty
You're
soon.
doing very well. Go on, Mr.
In
Kaiser.
gallons, Tom, that would be light years, I think.
Yeah, it would be. Yes, it would. Thank you, Mr. Bill. Thanks all of you for my help here on my presentation. Should I start over?
Oh, please don't.
Anyway, and in summary, we have 8 audits going. 2 are going to be presented in final review on the 11th. 4 in process, and 2 Coral and payroll auditor in the process. And also Craig is working on Midway to Bannister 230 kV transmission line phase 1. We've issued a report. Power is working on it right now, and they're discussing it, and we should have a report on that maybe in mid-November, early December.
Okay. Any questions or comments from this board? May I have a motion to accept?
Move to accept.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Please vote. Thank you, Mr. Kaiser.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 15, page 83 on your agenda, Open Access Transmission Tariff, OAT, Cluster 1 Study Impact, System Impact Study.
We officially announced kicking off what we're calling Cluster 1, which is the successor to the Transitional Cluster for Transmission Studies, on September 15th. And now it dawned on us that we may need to follow NWA protocol and come to the board because we are taking in $1.2 million in deposits from these developers for study purposes. In discussions with Mr. Steele, We think this is as much an informational item as it is anything else. If it's the pleasure of the board to vote on this, then we would ask for a waiver from the MWA to have to bring an MWA in for this, because it's just a cash in, cash out. Customer funded strictly. 1,690 megawatts, 25 projects.
And Mr. Steele recommends this?
No, I don't see this as being, I think this is just
Can we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Thank you.
Second.
Please vote. Thank you. Moving on to number 16, page 84, second quarter 2011 energy risk management records. Ms. Valenzuela.
Good afternoon, Madam President. And
are you going to inventory the water as well?
Yeah. I'll make this quick. I'm a little bit behind, but this is the actual second quarter of the 2011 risk management update report. So the third quarter will be following quickly. Probably next month I'm going to have them to the board. But just according to the risk policy, the risk manager, myself, I'm supposed to present to the board a summary of the energy risk management meetings, also kind of go over the budget variance for the purchase power and fuel based on my independent review of where I think it's going to be compared to the budget, and also the summary of the power strategy sheet, which basically kind of tells you what months we're looking at being short energy to cover our forecast, and also a quick summary of the energy and natural gas portfolios about how much we've got budget certainty on them, and any energy and natural gas transactions that might have occurred during that time period that exceeded 36 months to make sure that the board is aware of, and also compliance report identifying any violations. Just quickly, if you look at where we're at for the 2011, the purchase power and fuel budget was budgeted at about $238 million. It looks like when you looked at where prices have come in as of June 30th and where kind of prices were on some of the positions that we did not have secured, to me it looks like we're going to have about 16% variance, which is about a $37 million will be about $37 million under the budgeted amount for purchase power and fuel. And that's coming from about, right now, the actual load is about 4% less than what was forecasted, and the market prices that we're buying some of the fuel and the energy on is about 24% less than what was budgeted. So,
Ms. Valenzuela,
yes.
Do you know what was the did we hit 1,000 this summer on any particular one day?
You know, I was trying to remember if it was 1,004. Do you remember, Noe? It's 1,004 was it August? It was in August, 1,004
really?
Megawatts.
How long did it last? 2 seconds?
Probably not even maybe a second, because I think they measured every second of 60. Yeah, so it was 1,004 megawatts officially.
4 megawatts. Interesting. Okay.
And on the next, this is, like I said, what this is this comes from basically your resource planning group shows you what they forecast their energy requirements to be, their capacity requirements to be, and what they purchased. And this goes out for 36 months. So this is just to kind of let you know this. During the summer months, of course, we are short, and that's kind of the way we run. I mean, since we have such a high peak, we're short in the summer of 2012 and 13, so they will be procuring some contracts to get that. So we're short on average for 2012 at about 180 megawatts, and 2013 about, as you can see, a little bit over 260. So. The overall energy portfolio, now that's including, if I took into consideration the energy and the natural gas, we went into the summer, we had about 63% budget certainty overall, meaning that we knew we would not, because remember the policy shows that they need to be within 5% variance in order to be in compliance. So we had about 63% budget certainty for 2011 and about 58% for 2012. Now, if I break that down a little bit further to kind of show you, okay, out of that, your native generation portfolio, meaning for those generations out there, how much fuel they had hedged, there's about 69% of their forecast hedged in fixed price commodity, either fixed price or capped at a price for the budget. and for 2012, it's at 43%. Now, the other thing that's a lot different is from the first quarter, there was nothing hedged for Yucca because of that natural gas pipeline that finally got in. And in the second quarter, they did 3 trades. 2 of them was for the Yucca generation, and those 2 trades put Yucca at about 52%. Gave it about 52% budget certainty, and for 2011, and 47% for 2012. And just based on the current market conditions and the trades, it looks like they're going to come well, within their budget tolerance levels. So they're going to be about 37 million lower than what they budgeted, and there's no exceptions to report. And I'll be back probably hoping next month for the third quarter risk reports.
Okay, questions or comments from the board? If not, could I have a motion to acknowledge? Second. Discussion? Now, please vote.
The only thing I should make a quick comment on, I did reverse something on page 90. Was it page on? I just
Quick,
noticed.
you're ahead.
I know. Okay. Well, I just need for the record. On page 98, I showed when the Energy Risk Management group met. They met in April, and in May, I reversed the agenda items. Actually, in April they met regarding the summer of 2011 transactions. And in June, they met over the fourth quarter report. So or actually the first quarter of 2011 report. So, okay. But it is right in the board memo.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, is there any further business?
No, Madam President.
Meeting adjourned.